When I was 15, I was a bit of a daredevil and was full of that dumb teenage bravado. Living in a small town in Iowa, it got really boring sometimes, so all it took was a simple dare from one of my friends to spend the night at the local bowling alley, to have me sneaking up one of the drop ceiling tiles in the men's restroom, waiting until the place emptied out, then drop down to explore the empty building, like some kind of urban explorer. This would have been around 2005. I knew if I went through with it, rumors would begin to circulate around school, and I would be the cool kid for a while. As pathetic as that sounds, that was our version of clout in those days. We picked a Friday night. As I mentioned before, the entry point was the men's restroom. The ceiling tiles above one of the stalls popped loose easily enough. I had scoped it out during open bowling night the week before. I shimmied up with a small flashlight and crawled onto a wooden platform by the AC ducting and waited. The leagues ran late that night, but by 11 p.m., the last stragglers were gone. The lights were dimmed, and the place became as quiet as a tomb. When I didn't hear any more footsteps, music, or people talking, I pried the tile aside and lowered myself down. I came out of the restroom to an empty building. It was dead quiet. My heart was beating out of my chest, because I wasn't entirely sure if all the employees had gone home yet, so I cautiously made my way down the lanes. Slowly. After walking down the length of the building and just kind of stood there for about 10 minutes, I figured I was alone. I didn't hear anything. So then I started to get a little cocky and headed toward the back, past the vending machines, through the door marked employees only, which led to the machines behind the lanes. I had always wondered what they looked like. The pen setter room was narrow and hot. I shined my flashlight around and saw a bunch of metal arms and chains. Pretty underwhelming, to be honest. But that's when I saw something. There was a tall shape standing motionless by the emergency exit. At first, I thought it was a mannequin, but then it moved. I didn't expect anyone to be back there, so I had made it no effort to conceal myself. The figure stepped into my light. It was a man, wearing a dark jacket, and I saw in his hand he was holding a single bowling pin by the neck, like a club. I froze. My brain screamed at me to run, but my legs wouldn't move. When he took another step toward me, I bolted. I ran back through the door, across the open floor. I could hear him behind me, his boots thudding against the ground. "I'll fucking kill you," he shouted. I didn't look back. I just sprinted toward the restrooms. Thankfully, there was also a bar and a dining area near where the restrooms were. From his vantage point, he wouldn't be able to tell which one I had fled to once I rounded the corner. However, I saw a row of wooden stools against the wall. I grabbed one of the stools and hurled it toward him as hard as I could. It caught him in the leg, causing him to fall, and he went down hard. I didn't wait to see if he got back up. I sprinted into the men's room, yanked open the stall door, and hauled myself back into the ceiling, the tile snapping back into place just as I heard the restroom door burst open. I could hear him below me, pacing, muttering. At first, it was just heavy breathing. Then he spoke. "I'm gonna find you. I'll bash your head in." I pressed myself flat, barely breathing. Dust got in my nose and I had to stop myself from sneezing. The next thing the man said was disturbing. "You killed her. I know you killed my daughter. She was right here. And you took her from me." My blood went cold. Daughter? I didn't know what he was talking about. I hadn't killed anyone. He kept going on like that, voice rising and falling, like he was arguing with himself. "You'll pay for it. I'm gonna make you pay." He then banged the pen against the stall doors, one by one. Then, silence. The minutes dragged on. After maybe an hour, there was nothing. I had no idea if he was still down there waiting for me. I had a pretty good spot on the wooden platform, but I couldn't move without making noise. Eventually, exhaustion overtook me, and I fell asleep right there. I woke up to voices coming from below. The employees were coming in for the morning leagues. I waited for another hour, listening until the place was busy. Balls rolling, pins crashing, announcements over the speakers, etc. I carefully slid the tile aside again, making sure the coast was clear, before dropping down. I washed my face real quick to hide how wrecked I looked, and slipped out the side exit into the parking lot. No one batted an eye at me.
I moved into the basement apartment on a Friday in February. I'd taken it sight unseen, beyond a few photos online because I needed something fast and the price was low enough that I could actually breathe for a few months while I got settled into the new city. The building was a converted older home with 3 units, mine in the basement and 2 above it. The landlord lived directly upstairs in the middle unit. His name was Jerry. He met me at the door on move-in day with a handshake and a spare key and a list of building rules typed out on a single sheet of paper and laminated, which should have told me something about the kind of man he was, but I was tired from the drive and not paying close enough attention. He was in his mid-60s, average height, slim with close-cropped gray hair, and small pale eyes that were always slightly more focused than the situation called for. Friendly in a way I couldn't find any fault with specifically, but that never quite felt warm. He helped me carry 2 boxes and without being asked, and then stood in my living room for a few minutes longer than necessary, making conversation before I got him out. The apartment itself was fine. Low ceilings, small windows up near ground level, and a little dark even during the day, but clean and functional. I set up my stuff over the weekend and started work Monday and told myself I'd made a reasonable decision. The first thing I noticed was the schedule thing. About 2 weeks in, I was heading out for work and Jerry was coming down the stairs from his unit at the same moment, which I thought was a coincidence. Then it happened 3 days in a row and I started paying attention. He seemed to always be in the shared entryway or the parking lot or the laundry room at the exact times I was coming or going. Not every time, but enough that I started clocking it. He'd make small talk and how work was going and mention something about the building. Nothing inappropriate, just always there. Then he started knowing things. Small things at first. He asked one morning how the Thai place was, and I hadn't told him I'd ordered a Thai the night before. He mentioned once that I sounded like I had a rough call, and I had. I had a difficult work call that had upset me, and I'd taken it in my bedroom with the door closed and my voice pretty low. He asked me how my back was doing after I'd spent a Saturday moving furniture around. A Saturday he wasn't home for. A Saturday I hadn't spoken to him out at all. I told myself old building and thin floors and walls, so I told myself he was just perceptive. I also told myself I was being paranoid and that a nosy landlord was annoying, but not a reason to break at least 2 months in. I was very good at explaining these things away back then. I found the hole on a Wednesday night in April. I'd been lying in bed reading, and the lamp on my nightstand was throwing light up at the ceiling at an angle it didn't usually hit, and something in the corner caught my eye. I got up and stood under it and looked. A small dark circle, maybe the diameter of a pencil, in the corner where the ceiling met the wall. I got my phone's flashlight and stood on the bed and looked directly into it. There was a lens inside it. I stood there on my bed for a long moment just breathing. Then I got down and got a piece of black electrical tape from my desk drawer and covered it completely and pressed it flat and went to bed. I didn't sleep. I lay there in the dark listening to the sounds of the building and thinking about every conversation Jerry and I ever had and recontextualizing all of it and feeling sick. I woke up at 7 and the first thing I did was look at the ceiling. The tape was gone. I got up and walked to the corner and looked up. The hole was there, same size, same position, but the ceiling around it was slightly different. Fresh paint, matched perfectly to the existing color, feathered out around the hole so it blended. Done carefully, done by somebody who knew what they were doing. Done while I was asleep in the bed 6 feet away. I stood in my bedroom in the early morning and understood very clearly that whatever this was, it was not something I could rationalize anymore. I didn't confront him. I want to be clear about that choice because looking back, I think it's the reason I'm here to write this. Instead, I went to a hardware store before work and bought a small Wi-Fi camera, the kind people use for pet monitoring, and set it up on my bookshelf, pointed directly at the hole in the ceiling before I left for work. I angled it so it looked like it was just sitting there among my books. I reviewed the footage on my lunch break. At 11:08 in the morning, I think, 2 hours after I left, my bedroom door opened. Jerry walked in with a key. He was carrying a small paint kit and a roll of tape. He walked directly to the corner without looking around, like he'd been there 100 times, peeled something off the ceiling that I couldn't make out from the camera angle, touched up the area around the hole for about 4 minutes, packed up his kit, and turned to leave. Then he stopped. He turned back toward the room and stood at the foot of my bed and looked at it. He just stood there with his hands at his sides, looking at my unmade bed in the empty apartment. I watched the timestamp count upward. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3. For 4 minutes and 18 seconds, he stood at the foot of my bed looking at it before he finally walked out and pulled the door shut behind him. I sat in my car in the work parking lot for a long time after watching that. I knew I needed to go to the police. I also knew what I had so far. A landlord who entered my apartment, which was a violation but not necessarily criminal on its own, without more context, and a hole in my ceiling that I couldn't yet prove he put there. I needed more, so that night when I watched from my window and saw Jerry's car pull up out of the lot at 8 p.m., I took the emergency spare key he'd given me on move-in day and I went upstairs. His apartment was a mirror image of mine in layout but felt nothing like it. The living room was sparse and impersonal. No photos, no warmth at all, just furniture arranged with the kind of clinical precision. The kitchen was the same, and I moved quickly, checking rooms, telling myself I'd look for 10 minutes or so and leave. The back bedroom door was padlocked from the outside. A padlock on the outside of an interior bedroom door in a man's own apartment. I stood in the hallway looking at it and felt a particular cold that comes not from temperature, but from understanding something you can't take back. I went back to my apartment and got my bolt cutters from the storage closet where I kept my bike gear. I went back upstairs and cut the lock, opened the door and found the light switch and stood in the doorway for a long moment before I could make myself go in. The room had no furniture. What it had instead, covering every wall floor to ceiling, was a system. Multiple monitors on a folding table against the far wall are showing live feeds. The building entryway, the laundry room, the parking lot, and the hallway outside my door. Feeds from cameras I had never seen and couldn't account for. The walls themselves were covered in printed photographs and documents, organized by section, each section separated by strips of blue painter's tape. 6 sections in total, 6 different people and 6 different sets of photos and notes and printed records. Some of the photos were taken through windows. Some were taken inside apartments, from angles that could have only come from hidden cameras. Each section had a name written at the top in neat block letters, and below the name, a printed schedule, financial records pulled from the mail or documents, relationship information, and family contacts. Years of accumulated detail on each person, built slowly and methodically the way you'd build a case file. 4 of the 6 sections had a thick red diagonal line drawn through them from corner to corner. Those people were gone. I found out a year later that 2 of them had simply moved away and could be accounted for. The other 2 are still listed as open missing persons cases in 2 different counties. I didn't know that while standing in that room. I just knew the red lines felt like something being closed. My section was on the wall directly facing the door. The largest section, the most recent, the most densely covered. Months of photographs, schedules, and notes written in small, precise handwriting about my habits and patterns and routines. Photos taken through my bedroom window, my living room window, and inside my apartment from camera angles I still can't fully account for. In the center of my section, pinned at eye level, was a photograph of me asleep in my bed, taken the previous night, while my camera was pointed at the ceiling, while I was lying 6 feet away in the dark. At the bottom of my section, written directly on the wall in black marker, was a date, 3 days from that night. I called 911 from the street, sat in the curb across from the building with my phone and my bolt cutters and waited. They arrested Jerry 2 hours later coming back to the building. His name wasn't even Jerry. I'm not going to put his real name here, but it just wasn't Jerry. Know that. And the identity he'd used to purchase the building was constructed. He'd done this before. 2 other properties, 2 other cities, and the same setup in a back room each time. The detective who called me a week later was careful with what she shared but told me enough. She told me they found 19 cameras in my apartment. Not 1, 19, placed in every room over a period of months. Systematically, 1 by 1, I'd found one. I had been living for weeks thinking I'd found the thing, and there were 18 others I never knew about. I asked about the date on the wall. She was quiet for a moment and then said they were looking into it. She never called me back about that specifically. I've stopped expecting her to. And no, I don't live there anymore. I don't live in a basement anymore. Don't think I ever will again. I sleep with 2 cameras of my own in my bedroom now, and I check the footage every morning before I do anything else. I think about those 4 minutes at the foot of my bed more than anything. More than the cameras, more than the room upstairs, more than the date on the wall. Just a man standing alone in a stranger's empty apartment, staring at an unmade bed for 4 minutes in complete silence. I don't know what he was thinking about. I think that's the part I'm most grateful not to know.
After I moved into my college dorms, my lifestyle changed a lot. I started drinking way more than I ever did in high school. Back then it was occasional, but in college it became normal, almost routine. So when winter break came around, I went back home to my parents' house for the holidays. It felt good being back, but at the same time, I had already gotten used to that freedom. New Year's Eve was something I had really been looking forward to. It wasn't about family or traditions. It was about partying, drinking, and being around people my age. That night, my parents were out at a friend's party, which meant I had the house to myself. So I invited my 2 best friends over, Jim and Steve. Back then, that was basically our whole group. We didn't go out much, so nights like this felt like a big deal. We started drinking at my place, just hanging out, trying to figure out what to do for the night. That's when Jim mentioned a girl. He said he'd been talking to her for about a week. They matched on Tinder. He hadn't met her in person yet, but he said she was really pretty and seemed cool. Apparently, she had invited him to a New Year's party across town and told him he could bring friends. So naturally, we decided to go. We took a few shots of rum, finished a couple beers, and by the time we called the Uber, we were already pretty drunk. The ride there was normal. We were laughing, joking, hyping ourselves up for what we thought would be a typical party. But the moment we arrived, something felt off. The Uber stopped in front of what looked like a warehouse. Not a house. Not an apartment. A warehouse. We all kind of looked at each other, confused. Jim checked the address again. We all did. Same location. Before the driver left, Jim texted the girl to confirm. Almost instantly, she replied, "Yes, this is it." That should have been the moment we left, but we didn't. We got out, and the Uber drove away, leaving us standing there, in front of that building, in the middle of the night. We joked about calling another ride back home, but curiosity and alcohol won. We decided to go in. We walked around the building until we found a small side door that was slightly open. Standing next to it was a big guy. We asked him, "Is this the party?" He didn't say a word, just nodded and pointed inside. That silence, it felt wrong, but we ignored it. Inside was a narrow hallway, dimly lit, one hanging light at the end. As we walked forward, we could hear music, loud bass, like a party, but something about it felt distant, hollow. When we reached the end, it opened into a large room. This was supposed to be the party, but it didn't feel like one. There were maybe 20 or 30 people. No one was dancing. No one was really talking. People were just standing around or sitting alone, and almost all of them were looking at us. The lighting was awful, just cheap strobe lights flashing, making everything feel disoriented. And then we noticed something that made things worse. There were no girls, not a single one. We moved to a corner, away from the noise. I told Jim to text the girl again. He did. A few seconds later, he looked at us. She says she's in the back, past some double doors. Immediately, I felt uneasy. I told him it didn't feel right, but he insisted. "We'll just check. If she's not there, we leave." So, we followed him. We walked through the double doors. Another hallway, darker, narrower, doors lining both sides. It felt wrong, like we shouldn't be there. Halfway down, a guy suddenly stepped out of one of the rooms. He moved quickly, got close to Jim, and whispered something in his ear. Jim turned to us, and instantly, I knew something was wrong. His face had completely changed. "Let's go," he said. "Now." We didn't question it. We turned around and started walking back. But this time I could feel it. Everyone in that room was watching us, more intensely than before. One of the big guys near the entrance stepped toward us, like he was trying to block us. We pushed past him. Then, a voice from behind us shouted, "Yo, stop them!" That's when Jim yelled, "Run!" We sprinted. Down the hallway, out the door, across the parking lot, not looking back. Not stopping, we didn't slow down until we reached the main road. Out of breath, heart racing, we called another Uber. Once we finally calmed down, we asked Jim, "What did he say?" Jim hesitated, then said, "He told me, get out before midnight. They're going to trap everyone inside." None of us spoke after that. We didn't need to. We all understood. That girl, she probably wasn't real. Or if she was, she wasn't who she said she was. We made an anonymous call to the police, telling them something suspicious was happening at that building. Then we went back to my house. We spent New Year's Eve sitting in silence. No party, no celebration. Just the three of us, realizing how close we might have come to something really bad. We never found out what happened in that warehouse that night. And honestly, I don't think we ever want to.
I've worked the overnight shift at a hotel for going on 3 years now. It's not glamorous. You're mostly alone. You check in the occasional late arrival. You run the audit reports at 3 a.m. and you watch the clock until the morning crew relieves you at 7. I'm 24. I took the job because the differential pay was decent, and I've always been a night person. Or at least, I used to think I was. This happened about 3 weeks ago, and I still haven't entirely decided what I believe about it. The hotel is a mid-sized property, 112 rooms, 6 floors, attached to a conference center that sits empty most weeknights. It's the kind of place that hosts wedding blocks on weekends and corporate retreats Monday through Wednesday, and then goes almost completely quiet by Thursday. The building itself is older, renovated in the mid-2000s, so it has that particular smell. Carpet cleaner and recycled air, and long corridors that absorb sound in a way that makes the whole place feel underwater after midnight. I had been awake for a long time that night. Not as long as some people go, but long enough. My daughter had an ear infection, and had been crying the night before, which meant my wife and I were both up, and neither of us had gotten more than maybe 90 minutes of broken sleep before I had to drive in for my shift. I'm not complaining. That's just the setup. Because it matters. The hotel was at 40% occupancy. Conference center was dark. Parking lot had maybe 20 cars. My coworker, a guy named Darren who does the overnight security walk, had already done his 11 p.m. round and come back to tell me it was quiet before settling into the back office to watch something on his phone. By 1 in the morning, I was alone at the front desk, running on stale coffee and that particular kind of tired that sits behind your eyes like pressure. Around 1:15, the elevator at the end of the lobby dinged. That happens sometimes. Guests come down for ice, for vending, for no reason at all because they can't sleep. I looked up from the desk, ready to give whoever it was a polite nod. The elevator door opened. The lobby was dim, the way it always is overnight, with the ambient light from the front entrance and the soft glow from behind the desk. I could see clearly enough. No one came out. I waited a few seconds, assuming maybe someone had hit the button from upstairs, and then decided not to come down. The doors closed. I went back to my monitor. At 1:40, I did my own walk. Darren's supposed to do a second round at 2, but I usually do a quick lap through the conference center side, just to feel like I've moved my legs. The conference center connects to the hotel on the second floor via an enclosed walkway. I hate that walkway at night. It's mostly glass, so in the winter you can feel the cold radiating through it, and because of the angle, the lighting through the parking lot hits in a way that makes your reflection appear and disappear depending on where you're standing. It's the kind of place your brain invents movement in your peripheral vision without any help. I was almost back to the door when I saw a woman sitting in one of the chairs in the far end of the conference foyer. Just sitting there in the dark, posture rigid, hands folded in her lap, facing toward the window that looks out to the side parking lot. I stopped. My first thought was that the guest had wandered over and maybe fallen asleep sitting up, which sounds impossible, but genuinely happens. My second thought, almost simultaneously, was that every door between the hotel and the conference center requires a key after 10 p.m., and I hadn't badged through any door that was already open. I had used my card each time. I took a step toward her. She was older, white hair, dressed in something dark, a cardigan maybe. The kind of thing that looks like it belongs from a different decade. She was very still. I called out, "Ma'am, are you a guest with us?" She didn't move. Not a flinch. Not a turn of the head. I took 2 more steps, and the lights in the conference foyer, which are motion sensors, clicked on automatically, and the whole space flooded with that flat fluorescent light. The chair was empty, clean, pushed neatly up at the edge of the round table like no one had touched it all day. I stood there for what felt like a long time. There was nowhere she could have gone. The exit doors are alarmed. The door back to the hotel walkway was 10 feet behind me and hadn't opened. She was there, and then she wasn't. I stood in that bright, empty room and felt something cold move through me that had nothing to do with the temperature. I went back to the desk and I didn't tell Darren, partly because I didn't know how to say it, and partly because I'd already started doing the math in my head. 31 hours without real sleep, close enough to the threshold where your brain starts generating things and presenting them to you as fact. I convinced myself. I almost had myself fully convinced. At 3 a.m., I was running the night audit, which requires me to essentially lock the system for about 20 minutes while the reports generate. During that window, I can't check anyone in, can't pull up reservations, can't do much of anything, so I usually just sit and wait. The lobby was completely silent. Darren had gone back to the office. The parking lot outside the front windows was still. Then the phone at the desk rang. It was our internal line, the 4-digit extension that guests use to call the front desk from their rooms. The display showed the room number, 614. We have 6 floors. We have 112 rooms. The 6th floor only goes up to room 608. I stared at the display. It rang 4 times. I picked it up and said the standard greeting, our hotel name. How can I help you? There was sound on the other end. Not static, not silence. Breathing. Low and slow, and deeply unhurried. The way someone breathes when they're not aware they're being heard. Then a voice, a woman's voice, old and soft, said something I've been trying to unhear ever since. She said, "The ice machine on my floor is broken." And then the line went dead. I stood up so fast my chair rolled back and hit the wall. I pulled the room list. I pulled it up twice. There is no 614. There has never been a 614. Our 6th floor rooms run from 601 to 608. I went into the call log to see if I could find the internal extension record. There was no log of an incoming call at 3:04 a.m. No record. Nothing. Darren came out around 3:30, and I had him do an early walk on the 6th floor. He came back and told me it was empty. All 8 rooms. Dark. Quiet. Undisturbed. He didn't find an old woman. He didn't find anything. I've looked into sleep deprivation hallucinations since then. I know what the literature says. I know the brain can generate voices, images, entire sensory experiences when it's been pushed far enough. I know this, but I also didn't imagine the call log disappearing. I know I didn't imagine seeing those 4 digits on the display. I've put a request to transfer to day shift. I'm still waiting to hear back.
My story takes place 19 years ago. I'm female and I was 16 at the time. I'm probably 5'7", about 130 pounds, and I like to think that I'm strong, but I couldn't take on 2 young men. So it begins with my mom and stepfather going away on vacation and leaving my 17-year-old sister and me home alone. They did this often. My parents were not winning any parenting awards. My sister and I didn't get along either. She was a nasty piece of work. Luckily, she decided to go stay at a friend's house while my parents were away. I was kind of nervous about being alone, so I had my boyfriend staying with me. He was a pugnacious jerk, but I'm glad he was there. One night, Brett and I were at my house and we had just started messing around when I heard a really loud knock at the door. My room was in the basement, but at the landing area between the stairs. You know how some staircases are broken up and there's a turnaround area? That's the landing. There was a window which through I could see the stairs that led up to the alcove of our front porch. I could see 2 people standing there, and just as I was peeking out to see them better, one of them saw me. I remember feeling the breath sucked out of my chest. There were 2 young men sitting on the porch. It was almost midnight and I had no idea who the heck they were. The guy that saw me let his friend know, and they both looked in the window and asked me to come to the door. My boyfriend had gone upstairs to open the door, and I remember freaking out because I had told him not to. He was one of those guys that thought he was Mr. Tough Guy and believed he could fight anybody. He was telling the guys to leave just as I joined him at the door. They saw me and called me by name, and asked for me to let them in. Brett told him to screw off. One guy, I think, said his name was Wes or Les, something like that, said, "Come outside, just want to talk to you," to my boyfriend. I said, "No thanks, we're going to bed," and shut the door. I was really confused and getting very scared. They stood on my doorstep for a few minutes, then started knocking again. Wes, or Les, explained to me through the door that he was my sister's friend and that she had told him I was alone at the time and that they should come by. I knew my sister and I believed them. That did not, however, make me stupid. I told them to leave. They started kicking the door. I was shaking and I seriously feared that it would not hold up. I was so scared that I ran to my kitchen to call the police. I was assured that they would be there very soon and told to lock the doors and stay on the phone. Meanwhile, Brett was still yelling at them, which only served to piss these guys off more. I asked him to shut up, but he wouldn't listen. I was locking all the doors and windows upstairs while Brett went down to check the doors. Down in the basement, there was a huge mudroom area, and it had a thick wooden door made of 2x4 planks, kind of like a barn door. The door had a big old lock on it, some spring-loaded turn bolt, and also had a plank to set across it, like a barricade. One of the guys was pounding on this door, and Brett heard him tell the other guy to try the back door. This stupid door was one of those 1960s things that had a happy little square window right at face level, with a little curtain across it. I was at this door, trying to jam a chair under the flimsy knob, when I looked up and saw the unnamed guy just looking at me. I screamed, and the dispatcher asked me if I was alright. I barely squeaked out that one of the guys was looking right at me through the window. He was older than me, probably about 20, and he was tall. He looked very scary. His dark eyes were drilling into me. He wore this creepy, placid smile on his face. I had never seen this man before, but he knew my name. He tapped on the window with one finger, never breaking eye contact, and said, "Becky, let me in." I couldn't breathe. The knob was rattling as he was messing with it. He said again, "Let me in, Becky. I just want to see if you're okay, and I just want to talk." He stared at me. I didn't say anything. I was just 3 feet from him with my back pressed to the fridge when he suddenly started beating on the door and screamed, "Let me the F in this house. If I have to break in, I will kill you both. So just open the door." He looked absolutely maniacal. Then there was a loud knock at the front door, and the man went silent. He gave me the most hateful sneer I'd ever seen. I heard shouting, and he ran down the back stairs and into the woods along the back of my yard. Brett had gone to the door. It was the cops. There were 2 female officers at the front door, and one was just starting to raise her voice, asking where I was when I came to the door too. I was so relieved I started crying. I told them they had run away through the woods. Luckily, the woods were not deep. They actually ran along the bank of the large river, and there was a bridge just up from where the woods met the road. One officer ran around the back, while one stayed to get a description and take my statement. Officer number 1 came back and spoke to officer number 2, saying she saw them running across the bridge. They both left in a hurry, hopped in the cruiser and sped off. I was still crying and shaking, but I was absolutely furious at Brett for riling them up. I went to make myself some tea, thinking of all the things I could kill my sister with when she got home. I had so much anger, fear, and adrenaline pumping through me, I could have ripped her to shreds at that moment. 20 minutes later, the cruiser came back. There were 2 guys sitting in the back seat, and the officers wanted me to confirm it was the right guys. I looked through the window and saw them. They still looked terrifying to me. They were in cuffs and could not get to me, but I would not get close to them. Neither would look at me. I confirmed it was them and we spoke a bit. I told the cops about my sister, suggesting that these 2 men should come see me. Officer number 2 kind of mumbled, "What an absolute bitch." I had to agree. I pressed charges for attempted forcible entry, property damage. They had broken a window in the living room, trespassing, disorderly conduct, and attempted assault. Initially, they both pleaded not guilty, but later admitted to some of the charges. They both got 18 months in jail and were forbidden to contact me or my boyfriend ever again, and to be at least 500 meters from me at all times. I have never heard from them again. I confronted my sister about it, and of course she denied it, then laughed about it. Laughed at me. She was an awful person. I have no idea what their true intentions were, as they maintained that they were just there to talk to me. I'm thankful I didn't have to find out.